Welcome to our Historia, a place where Latinos and Chicanos can tell their stories. Today we have Professor Lorenzo Cano, who is Associate Dean at the Mexican American Studies at the University of Houston. Welcome, Professor Cano. It is a pleasure having you here at our Historia.
Well, it is great to be here. I have been working at the Center for Mexican American Studies going on 27 years.
Today I would like to ask you a few questions about your involvement in the Chicano and Latino community, as well as hear some history and some of your personal experience within the Chicano movement. I'd like to first ask you about your upbringing.
I was born in Corpus Christi. My father actually was drafted in the Second World War, so he fought in the African theater of war. He was one of some estimates are as high as 500,000, and some of the lower estimates are about 350,000 people of Mexican descent who fought on the U.S. side in the Second World War. Grandparents on my mother's side also came as political refugees. My maternal grandfather worked in the railroad industry as a telegraph operator. My mother had the opportunity very early on to begin going to college, and then when my dad came back from the Second World War, they met and they got married. But she did go back. She did go back when we were all born, 5 of us. Now, having said all that, I'm a product of that generation, and I'm also was born and I was raised during the turbulent 60s. So that was my schooling informally, where I was caught up in trying to learn more about the women's rights movement, the black civil rights movement, and of course the Chicano movement. But I also like to refer to it as the Chicano movement as well, because it was a period where young people were questioning the values of society. We were questioning things like the Vietnam War. We were questioning why there was segregation in the public school systems and all of the other ills that we thought simply didn't fit right if in fact we were a country, a society that promoted democracy and diversity.
What do you think encouraged you and your family to get into activism?
We were always expected to go to college. We never felt that we fitted in, because in this society at that time you had to assimilate in order to be successful. You had to forget who you were in order to be successful. And we never felt comfortable with that. This, of course, was happening at the same time that we began to see the growth of the Chicano movement, the growing Chicano movement and Chicano movement in this country. We felt attracted in being part of this growing movement that to us was very exciting. And we believed that we didn't just want to read about history, we wanted to make history.
What were the greatest issues that impacted that community?
Well, I think the issues were we were seeking political representation. We were seeking to have control of our own political destiny. That led to the concept that comes out of the Chicano movement and the Chicano movement of community control and also self-determination. Community control basically was the idea that in our community we needed to be the owners of those institutions in our community. It was a very, very interesting philosophy, because we were questioning who ran the schools. And if we were going to have control of our own destiny as a racialized group in the United States, then we needed to assume control of those institutions such as the public schools. So therefore we ran people for political office, for school board. And the same thing can be said for city council and county commissioners, and so on and so forth, all the way down the line.
Can you speak a little bit about how colonialism has affected the Latino and Chicano community?
Many of us in the Chicano movement reasserted and recognized our indigenous identity as a people. Something that had been taken away from people in Mexico by the Spaniards, who tried to make the indigenous people of Mexico European and to become more European. So we studied things like colonialism. We realized that we went back thousands of years as indigenous people in this part of the country, and that our presence here in the United States was not one of immigrants, but in fact this is our historic homeland, and that those colonial and semi-colonial institutions and systems that were in place had to be changed, and had to be, in some cases, totally done away with if we were going to be able to have control of our own destiny.
What kind of advice can you give the young people who are just now getting into activism?
Organizing and being part of a social movement or just an organization that's dedicated to meaningful social change, it will be a sacrifice. They will encounter some degree of conflict within the organization, and certainly they will encounter conflict with the broader organization and the powers to be. But my advice is to know this now and to learn how to roll with the punches. Do not get discouraged. Understand that if they're able to organize and be part of these efforts, that it's probably because they're in a privileged position. We have to be tenacious, as we have demonstrated by many others, and we have to be committed to this in order for us to succeed.
I would like to thank our guest, Professor Cano, for joining us here at our Historia. And I would like to thank the viewers for viewing in and listening to Latinos and Chicanos telling their stories. Till next time, many blessings.